Hi class, this is going to be our first in a series of videos about mood disorders. So just to kind of give you a broad overview, mood disorders are going to include both depression or depressive disorders, as well as bipolar disorders. So in this first one, we'll be focusing more on depression. So I want to get into a couple of things in today's talk. What is that experience of depression? Is this more than just sadness? Is depression the same for every single person that experiences this? What are some of the causes? So we'll kind of go into the biopsychosocial model and look at that, as well as treatments for these disorders. So first, just to clarify, there are multiple types of depressive disorders. First is the one that we usually think about, which is major depression. So major depressive disorder is characterized by at least a month of these types of symptoms. So depressed mood, something that we call anhedonia, which is feeling no interest or pleasure in anything, sleeping and eating issues, either sleeping too much, eating too little, or sleeping too little and eating too much, right? Low feelings of self-worth. And a second type that we're going to cover is persistent depressive disorder. We'll kind of go into this a little bit more in depth in our class, but basically it's 2 or more years of low mood. It sometimes doesn't get all the way down to the level of depression as major depression does. In fact, it's not supposed to. But it's kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of like this guy here, Eeyore. So Eeyore kind of always kind of has this low self-worth, low mood, isn't, depressed to the point where Eeyore can't go on adventures with Winnie the Pooh, but at the same time, it's always just really negative about themselves. So those are the 2 major types. There's other types like seasonal affective disorder, which tends to go with the seasons. So you get depression, for example, during the winter months. There's also, what other things are there? There's premenstrual dysphoric, PMDD. But basically, these are the 2 major types. So first, just thinking about the different types of experiences that people have. Here are a couple of quotes from different participants in a study. I felt like I hit rock bottom. I couldn't get off the couch. I couldn't bathe. I couldn't do anything. So you see that there's a lack of motivation, feeling really low and down and not able to do much. The other one, I had insomnia, irritability, a tendency to draw inward and away from friends and family. Just a lack of interest in doing anything, like ennui on steroids. So again, a lot of that, having a hard time sleeping, lots of irritability that you can see sometimes. And the last one, I was sleeping about 12 hours a day. So you can see somebody has insomnia and this other person's sleeping 12 hours a day. I was having actual paranoid thoughts. I would check my apartment multiple times for being able to go to sleep because I was convinced that someone was in there, even to the point that I was checking kitchen cabinets. I had a lot of crying, a lot of disordered ruminations, that nobody liked me and nobody was talking to me. This last one here, a lot of the paranoid thoughts, sometimes individuals with depression during a depressive episode will sometimes experience some forms of psychosis. So things like being paranoid or having delusions or hallucinations, those can come up in the context of a major depressive episode. So we see a lot of different types of symptoms. This is just one way to kind of look at these different symptoms that we have. These emotional experiences. Some people will describe depression as feeling very empty and not getting pleasure in anything. So they may actually kind of almost feel like a lack of emotion, that they feel almost numb to what's going on. Motivational symptoms, you really lose motivation to do a lot of things. And so it can be really hard, right? If you don't have motivation to get off the couch, it might be really hard to take that first step off the couch to start feeling better. And we'll talk about this, about what are some of the treatments of depression. And some of those are actually to go out there and do things behaviorally that you don't normally do when you're depressed. So with those behavioral symptoms, you see less activity, less productivity, and that might lead into continuing to feel the same way. We also see their thought processes can be distorted, very negative, blaming themselves for things that they had nothing to do with. And there can be also some physical symptoms that go on to this. General fatigue is something that people talk about, but there could be some of these other symptoms as well. So one of the terms that I want you to know is anhedonia. If you've ever heard the term, hedonism, which really means feeling pleasure or moving towards pleasure, this is anhedonia, so it's the lack of hedonism. So it's really that lack of interest in doing something pleasurable. So you can imagine that if somebody loved playing soccer and would want to go out and play soccer every weekend with their friends, and then they become depressed, they may withdraw from that and not find pleasure in actually playing soccer anymore. The paradox of feeling, this little comic here talks about the anhedonia, or the inability to feel. Imagine walking through life not being able to feel anything around you, passing everything by. So it really is one of those symptoms that I think also makes it very difficult to want to participate in anything because you are having that lack of interest and a lack of pleasure when you are doing something. To give us some data, over the last year, at least this was in 2016, what you see is that major depressive episodes, so that is actually the criteria for major depressive disorder, minus the fact that you don't have any mania symptoms. This is really showing you that it is pretty prevalent, 6% to 7%. This is from 2016, so I don't think that there's more updated version, but I'll check that one of these days. Females are more likely than males to develop depression. You also see that the right time for developing depression is sometime in this, late teenager to early adulthood years. So being a young adult, you're more at risk compared to older adults. And you see that, depression does vary by race and ethnicity. I think one of the things to note here is that if you are an individual that identifies as 2 or more ethnicities, that puts you at the highest risk. And we can think about reasons why, we talked about culture a couple weeks ago, but thinking about, well, maybe there's something to be said about, having dual cultures, or maybe being more at risk for some of those discrimination and racism, which increases your stress, which could lead to major depression. So we'll talk about those, the causes and the reasons for major depression in our next video.